Welcome back to Making Money Matter, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Kerry Stevenson, and I am absolutely delighted to be at the New Orleans Investment Symposium, and I've managed to catch up with Russell Gray. He's the founder of the Mainstream Media Network, but also really important, I wanted to talk to him about the Raising Capitalist project. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to see you.
Happy to be here. Very excited about it. Glad you made the trip all the way from Australia.
Yeah, quite the trip. But what an event this has been. So, big shout out to Brian London and Gold Newsletter because it's been fantastic. And I've just come from watching you on stage having what I call a little battle with Peter Schiff and Brent Johnson and Larry Lepard. It was fantastic, but it was talking about sound money.
Yes.
Which we will get into in a moment. But before we do, in Australia, we have a real challenge at the moment, I believe, with the younger generation, youth crime, things getting a little bit out of control. And one of the things I noted that you were doing is this Raising Capitalist project. So can you explain to my audience what that's all about?
Well, it's solving the problem you just alluded to. I think every generation inherits a little bit of a raw deal from the previous generation.
Okay.
In the United States, we could make the argument, we hear all the time here, the boomers, get complained about because we rode the inflation gravy train and everybody made equity happen in their real estate and in their stock portfolio. And a lot of their great investing is just riding this inflation wave. And the millennials are looking at it and going, hey, you guys took all the money. And there's young influencers out there, in their 40s. I'm 65 years old. And, they feel like they got a raw deal. And Gen Z's like, we're going to be the first generation that is not going to be better off than our family. There's no jobs. It's, we get these college degrees and we're saddled with debt. It's not fair. And then you have a whole group of people that say, hey, the 1% control everything. And so they're bitter against monopolies. And they've conflated the word monopoly with capitalist. And so they think capitalism is about monopolies. And so there's a big misunderstanding of what capitalism is. And so I think a younger generation is rightfully upset. But for the people that are disparaging the boomer, and full disclosure, I'm on the tail end of that cohort.
Yeah.
Our parents let Nixon take us off the gold standard and break that. And their parents let FDR confiscate all of the gold from Main Street. And their parents let the Federal Reserve get formed and took the power of making money or issuing money away from the Treasury and gave it to a private cartel. So every generation could point at the previous generation and go, hey, you guys left us a raw deal. However, if you follow the work of Neil Howe and the Fourth Turning, you just realize that these dispensations, this isn't a market cycle we're in. This is the end of a dispensation. We started a global fiat currency regime in 1971. When Nixon took the world effectively off the gold standard. And so that changed everything. It changed a lot of things on Main Street all around the world. It gave the U.S. the ability to export its inflation, and it did. It created floating currencies all around the world because everything was delinked from the anchor, the stabilizing factor, which was gold.
Correct.
There was no concept of what's an ounce of gold worth. It's an ounce of gold. What's a dollar worth? An ounce of silver. What's an ounce of silver worth? $1, right? I mean, there was no, they were 100% linked. Talk about stable coin, it was stable. So all that changed. And so without a financial education, you don't understand why it's broken. You don't need a financial education to know that it's broken. There's no jobs, everything costs too much, I can't afford a house. Like, I don't know what's wrong. Somebody must have broken it. Who can I blame? And the people who broke it don't want you to look at them. So there's a lot of what I think are manufactured distractions. We're going to divide you left from right. We're going to divide you gay from straight. We're going to divide you from Christian and Muslim. We're going to divide you between man and woman. We're going to divide you between boomer and Gen Z. Whatever we're going to do, we're going to divide you. So the one thing you don't do is look at us.
Right.
Because we run the world through the money system.
Yeah.
And I interviewed Lawrence Lepard earlier, he was my co-panelist this morning on the future of money. Until you fix the money, you can't fix the system.
But the system, you say you can't fix the system until you fix the money, if you like. The money doesn't want to be fixed because those that are if you like, in charge of
Correct.
the system, they don't want you to look at it and they don't want it fixed.
Yeah, that's my point.
So my question to you is, will it ever be fixed? Or are we just going to continue kicking the can down the road and creating a widening gap between the haves and have-nots?
So I had a really interesting experience. I'm not big on international travel, but I had an opportunity with my former partner when I was co-hosting the Real Estate Guys radio show to fly to France, and I'd never been.
Okay.
And so we went to France for the purpose of interviewing Ivana Trump, because we were doing a real estate deal that she was affiliated with in Las Vegas.
Right.
So we flew there, and we happened to go to I can't remember the name of the hotel. It's a big, fancy, famous hotel. Everybody knows it. It's right across from...
Not the George Sank.
Maybe.
Okay.
It's right across from where they beheaded Marie Antoinette.
Right.
Right. And Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson and Ron Howard and everybody, they were filming the Da Vinci Code while we were there.
Wow.
And so it was super cool. And what I was fascinated by was the history. And the history is the people got to a point where they're like, you know what? We don't like this system anymore. And Marie Antoinette lost her head, right? So things will go on, abuses will go on, just like they did in America before our founders said, okay, that's enough. We're going to push back. And they secured our ability to push back. In the U.S. Constitution, the very first amendment, the very first unalienable right that was given to us by God and protected, not given to us by the Constitution, protected by the Constitution, is what we're doing right now. We're able to assemble, we're able to share ideas.
Right.
Because ideas, thoughts, freedom of speech, ideas become actions, and actions create results. And that's why controlling the narrative is so important. And if they can divide you and make the narrative rhetoric and divisive, then we will not come together. If you've seen the movie The Bug's Life, where the grasshoppers are scared to death, the ants are going to figure out they're in the majority.
Yeah.
Well, the First Amendment and technology, the very technology we're using right now, has woken up the ants. The ants are Main Street.
Yeah.
And globally, all around the world, we are seeking to be free from the monopolists. And one of my missions is to educate young people, to meet them where they're at. You are 100% right. This system is broken. You're getting a raw deal.
Okay.
That's the bad news. The good news is you can fix it. We can fix it. Because
Together.
It isn't boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. That's not what it is.
We're humans.
It's the generation on duty right now, whether you're 18 or 80 years old, that is getting the call to action. Not the call to arms, the call to action to change this system. And it starts with ideas. It starts with learning. And so the first thing you have to understand is that all of human society is organized around economics from the Bible. Be fruitful and multiply. Paul saying, if you don't work, you don't eat. To the Bible talking about usury, which is interest, and fair weights and measures, right? It's all about organizing human productivity to meet human needs. And so you will always have an economy and some form of financial system. It's just a question of how efficient it will be. If it's barter, not very efficient, right? If it's systems where the banks are only open on certain days and it costs a lot of money to transact, not very efficient. With technology, everything can become very, very efficient. But the people who want to control things, of all the things they want to control, the one thing that allows them to control everything else is the money and the financial system. And so if we can argue about everything else and not go to work on just wresting the control of the financial system from what I call the wizards, then they will continue to operate in the shadows and manipulate markets. When you can print money out of thin air, you can manipulate any market.
Absolutely.
You can buy any politician. You can start any war. There's nothing you can't do when you can print money out of thin air. So that has to stop. And so the system of capitalism, Main Street capitalism, is understanding that capital are goods and services. They're things that are of real value to human beings. And so if you're a capitalist, not a trader of claims on capital, I'm not trading claims on capital. If I go build a home, That home didn't exist till I built it.
Yep.
If I go plant an orchard, that orchard didn't exist, at least not fruitfully, until I built it. If I'm trading stocks and I'm not, do what you want to do, but the whole world can't just trade claims, right? If we all are trading coupons for sandwiches, who's making the sandwiches, right?
No one's being behind the scenes and being productive.
Correct. So I have all these ways I illustrate to children these very basic principles. But the idea here is that we've got to get people to understand, what capitalism is.
What it truly
is a
is.
human being waking up, being productive.
Yep.
And if you wake up and you're productive based on your unique gifting and interest, and I'm productive based on my unique gifting and interest, and you happen to make clothes, and I happen to grow food, you might say, well, I'm hungry. And I say, well, I'm naked. So why don't we make a deal here? I'll trade you. And then everything evolves from that. Now, if you didn't make clothes and I didn't grow food, I don't care how many claims on clothes and food you gave us, there's nothing to eat and nothing to wear.
Yeah.
So productivity must precede consumption.
Okay, so I need to ask you this, because you talk about productivity, but certainly in the West, what I'm seeing at the moment is that we are too comfortable because the governments letting us be comfortable by giving us the handouts, if you like. And as you said just before, the printing of currency out of thin air is going to continue. Why would it stop? And how do you, I guess, change that tipping point whereby the majority of people are actually being kept comfortable by the handouts? How do you change that tipping point into a way where people understand that being productive is a good thing and being unproductive or just taking a handout is not good for anyone, because they're comfortable and this is what they've always known, and potentially that's all their parents have known. It's a generational thing now.
It's a cultural thing.
Yeah, it's cultural too.
So Larry Lepard says, fix the money, fix the world. My presentation opening night here was about the culture wars, and I say, fix the culture, fix the country. So there is a work ethic that you have, right? You can be eligible to take handouts, but you don't have to take them.
Well, but that's a cultural thing, but it's also, if you're so used to it and you just don't want to work because, you've got 2 arms and 2 legs. Because if I go back in time, for example, where I'm from in Australia, the benefits from the government were for people like my niece, who she can't work. She has severe cerebral palsy. So the support needs to go to those people. But if you've got 2 arms, 2 legs and a bit of a brain, then you need to be productive. But unfortunately, that has stopped because as I said before, we've become too comfortable, but also we've lost the art of critical thinking and debate.
Yes.
Because it goes back to the schools and the rote learning.
Right.
So there's so much to unpack here.
It is. But again, it all starts with ideas.
Yes.
So if you understand that ideas are the genesis, and they become actions, and actions become results. Let's put that into practical terms. I believe that I should get free stuff. That's my thought. That's my belief.
That's your belief.
And based on that belief, I not only will accept benefits, I will vote for anybody that will give them to me.
Correct.
Okay? And so based on that, I'm going to produce a result. Now, I may not understand the mechanism by which that result is produced. Anybody that studies economics understands that when people don't produce, there's no production. Mm-hmm. And at some point, when the people who do produce, if you've read Atlas Shrugged, decide that we're all going to join the crowd that doesn't produce, then there's no production and everybody starves. And the end experiment for anybody that will look at history is every single time communism has been tried, it results in starvation and shortages for this very reason. But you cannot understand that if A equals B and B equals C, A equals C. How you think will create the result, but you're going to pass through a series of actions to get there. You want to change the result, you got to change the actions, but you won't change the actions until you change the thinking. So my friend Peter Schiff says good economics is bad politics.
Yeah.
And bad politics is good economics. And that's the reason we get such bad bad politics bad economics from our politicians. And so, but how do we get bad politicians? Well, we have bad voters. Well, how do we get bad voters? We have bad education. Well, how do we fix the education? Well, there's a couple of different ways. There are people who think you can go into the front door that's guarded, barricaded with AR-15s. In other words, you're not going to go in and reform the educational system, the government-run educational system. They've got unions. They're entrenched.
They are entrenched.
Okay? So you're not going to reform the banking system. You're not, right? They're entrenched. You're not going to reform it. And so what you have to do is you have to sidestep it. And so in the 80s, my wife and I looked at what was going on in the world, and we said, well, we're not going to participate in the school system. We're going to homeschool.
Yeah, that's happening a lot more.
So we sidestepped it.
Yep.
And we taught our kids. And ultimately, they came to work with me. And when they came to work with me, they learned to be a capitalist by being a capitalist. I didn't teach them about capitalism. They participated in capitalism. We built businesses. I built a $1 million mortgage company with my older daughter. I built a $1 million education company with my middle daughter. And she learned how to organize an idea and turn it into an operational business generating bottom line profits. And she learned that at 16 years old. She's 40 years old today, and she still helps entrepreneurs who have great ideas actually implement
put them into action.
Yeah. And so those are real skills. Those are real life skills.
So, but it's teaching that younger generation, because as you said just a moment ago, what are we teaching them in the current system isn't working. We're failing the next generation or the generation below that even. So what I just want to quickly ask you, because we don't have a lot of time left, is this program, the Raising Capitalist Project.
Yeah.
Is that just in the US at the moment? Because I started this conversation by saying we have an issue, in my opinion, in Australia.
It is right now, but I would be happy to change that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to change that. So I set it up as a nonprofit foundation here. It's my legacy project. Everything I do in business is going to go into the foundation. The purpose of the foundation is to train up a network of mentors, experienced entrepreneurs and investors who are not only going to teach, but they are going to invest. So the funds that get invested in the foundation are going to be a venture fund to help launch businesses on Main Street. It can be done in any country. I'm building the model here in the U.S., but if you've got people out in your audience right now listening to this and they want to do the same thing, come along for the ride. I will. Let's build it together.
And look, I know that a lot of you out there are saying, yeah, we have a problem in Australia. We know this. So that's why I was very keen to talk to you today and just let people be aware that there is something happening out there, that there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, if you like. And I'd be keen to continue this conversation because I so understood when you were talking this morning. I just was like, I need to meet him because he's got some ideas that we need to expand on. So
that's why we come to these conferences, to find amazing people.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled to have had a chance to be on your show, to get to know you. I'll look forward to talking with you again.
Great. Thanks so much for joining us. And how can people find the programs that you're doing at the moment?
I think the easiest way to keep track of everything I'm involved in is just send an email to follow at Russell Gray, RussellGray.com.
Follow at russellgray.com. So that if you want to reach out, that's what you do. Follow at russellgray.com. But for me, this is Kerry Stevenson for Making Money Matter here at the New Orleans Investment Symposium, and it's been terrific to chat to you.
Thank you.